Hey guys, it's Numa, and today we're going to be talking about the Gintama Collab. For this egg machine, it's only 5 magic stones, which is really good for what it gives out. One of its best points is that every single 5-star in this egg machine have their uses, and none of them are necessarily weak. But I would say this egg machine is more lean toward the early game players and the newer players, mostly because the weapons are really strong for newer players, and it gives you easy access to things such as like immobility resistance weapons really easily. I do want to mention, however, that at the pace Gunko is going at right now in releasing egg machines and collabs, we're probably gonna get the Bleach collab really soon, and maybe even the Gunko collab pretty soon. So make sure you really want one of these characters before you actually spend this gacha. But there is one character in this list that stands at the top of one of the categories in Puzzles and Dragons. Starting with the 6 stars, we got Shigeshige Tokugawa. With his awakenings are very DPS based. It's pretty standard, like a high DPS character. He has 2 7Cs and 1 DPP. And you can either put a 7C or DPP on his Super Awakenings for more DPS. For his skill, he deals 300,000 fixed damage to all enemies and change orbs to wood, light, and heal orbs. The orb conversion is nice, but it's pretty standard. For the 300,000 fixed damage, there are already characters like Ilmina that are much better for some situations, really specific situations that you need 300,000 damage. So I wouldn't say it's too amazing. For his leader skill, it's not a good leader skill, to be honest. It's nice that he gets a double damage resistance, but he doesn't have an HP multiplier, he doesn't have a healing multiplier, and his damage multiplier is only 15 times, which is pretty low in the state the game is at right now. If you do get this character, I definitely recommend to evolve him because his evolution form is completely busted. For the evolution, we got Shigeshige Tokugawa and Ganesha. The only part you really need to look at is his leader skill. For his leader skill, he has a 1.8 times rank XP multiplier while having a 16 time damage multiplier. That's crazy. He basically has the same rank XP multiplier as Selene while having a much bigger damage multiplier. Basically, simply speaking, this makes Selene low-key dead. While there are some situations where Selene can be better because of her skill, making a full board of light orbs being much better than just doing 300,000 damage, Shigeshige can completely hold his own in harder dungeons. So usually if you want to farm harder dungeons with XP multiplier characters, you don't really have much leeway in parties. You're really limited which dungeons you can go, and you can usually only have like 1 XP grinder in the higher levels because you can only leader swap 1 leader. But now that Shigeshige and Tokugawa is here, you can possibly get both leaders to be Shigeshige and Tokugawa and then leader swap. So in the end, you'll have a higher XP multiplier than you just having 1 Selene in your party. So really simply summarizing what I just said, basically now that he's here, we can have a 3.25 multiplier on harder dungeons than just an 1.8 times multiplier on harder dungeons, which is a huge difference. For his weapon evolution, well, it's basically just an L-shaped weapon. The HP boost and the recovery boost aren't all that useful, and the skill, again, isn't that amazing. So if you really need a L-shaped weapon, then I guess it's fine, but there are much better L-shaped weapons in the game right now. So if you do get one of these characters, I definitely recommend just getting the post-evolution and maybe just trading the rest. Next is Kintoki. For his awakenings, he has a skill boost plus, a DPP, and 2 50% or less enhances. And for his super awakenings, this is where you have to make a pretty tough decision. You can either make your character into a 4 skill boost character by putting a skill boost plus on it, or you can make it into a 3 50% or less enhanced character by putting a 50% or less enhance on a super awakenings and making his 50% or less enhances 8 times multiplier. Or you can put a blind resistance plus just to have more gimmick resistance. So it's up to you to choose. For skill, his skill is pretty decent. It's on the better side. It has a turn damage resistance and a 2-turn attribute absorption nullifying skill. This skill is going to really pick and choose where you want to use it. It's a really specific skill, but I wouldn't say it's a bad skill. It's only 11 turns too, but I wouldn't say it's really outstanding. For his leader skill is also really decent. He has a 1.5 times the HP multiplier, a 25% damage resistance when he's under 80%, and his max damage output is 16 times. It's not a bad leader skill, but the only issue is his survivability is pretty low, so I wouldn't really recommend using him as a leader. He's more of a sub character. For his evolution, Kintoki and Wukong, or Sun Wukong, his awakenings change and he gets 3 skill boost, so you can make your character a 5 skill boost character now. For this evolution, I'd recommend putting a skill boost plus on his super awakening, and he gains 3 DPPs. And for his leader skill gains a 2 times multiplier for all stats, and when you use your skill, you get a 3 times multiplier, and when you clear 6 light orbs, you get a 3 times multiplier, and when you clear 9 light orbs, you get 2 added combos. This leader skill is actually pretty good because of its all stat covering his previous weakness of having low survivability and having that 2 added combos. His only issue is that he does need a skill trigger, so you're gonna need a character that can throw out a skill every single turn, which might get a little annoying. But overall, the post evolution is extremely strong. For his weapon evolution, his weapon awakenings look really good. He has a bind resistance plus and a 50% or less enhance. And while this looks really good because, well, you get a bind resistance along with a really strong awakening, a DPS awakening, most of the top class 50% or less enhanced characters already have bind resistance on them. Like, think Roche already has bind resistance. Theor already has bind resistance. Zeta Dark Color already has bind resistance. So if you don't have a 50% or less enhanced weapon, this weapon would work fine, but there's a lot better options for 50% or less enhanced, like maybe the Kurama weapon from the Samurai Showdown collab. However, that doesn't mean that there won't be new characters coming out without a bind resistance, and maybe just has tons of 50% or less enhances. So I wouldn't say not to get it, not to keep it, because when that character comes out, I'm going to be the one to blame. But I'm just saying, as of right now, I'd say just post-evolution is the way to go. Next is the main character of the anime, Gintoki. For his awakenings, he's a 7C and a 10C, giving him a 10 times damage multiplier, and he has a DPP on his super awakening. So his damage output is extremely high, making an amazing damage sub, especially for parties like Fosca Lampade, because he's an attack type. If you are going to put him in parties like Fosca Lampade though, the skill for Gintoki isn't all that amazing. His skill adds 2 combos for 1 turn and reduces damage by 75% for 2 turns. Although it can help with damage output and survivability, it is 13 turns, which is pretty decently long. And for his leader skill isn't all that good. It only gives a 3 times healing multiplier and a 30 times damage multiplier without an HP buff or damage resistance, so I wouldn't really use this Gintoki as a leader. For his evolution, Gintoki Sakura and Ameno Minakanushi, this character isn't all that amazing, overall. There's not really much of a reason to go over him. There's not much of a use for him at the moment right now. He's really just a farming character, but you don't really need to use him as a farming character. The only special thing he has, well, he does have 4 skill boosts, and the other special thing he has is that he's able to farm with both light and water types, because you can get you can reach max damage with each attributes. But it's just better overall to just focus on one attribute anyways. So if you do get Gintoki, I wouldn't recommend using it post evolution. Next is Shiroyasha Gintoki Sakata. For his awakenings, he has 3 7Cs, an L shape, and 3 skill boosts. And for his super awakenings, he has the DVP. So as a DPS role, he's extremely strong. And for his skill, he has an 8-turn skill that removes all awakened skill binds and changes the second row from the top to water orbs. I said earlier the first evolution would be really good for Fosca Lampade parties, but I think this Gintoki Sakata would be much better. The only issue is, if you use this one, is that Fosca has an awake bind heal, Lampade has an awake bind heal, and Gintoki also has an awake bind heal. So there's not much of synergy between the skills in the party. For his leader skill is not all that amazing. It's extremely decent. It doesn't have an HP multiplier. His attack multiplier is only 15, which is really low. But he does reduce damage by 35% and gives you an auto FUA of 1 damage. So if you really want a water attribute auto FUA character, I guess this character could work well with Fosca, but he lacks a lot in survivability and damage, so I really wouldn't recommend it. For his weapon evolution, for the Awakenings, there's not many skill boost weapons out there with a gimmick resistance on it, so in that way, this weapon is pretty strong. But then again, the game is a little bit inflated in the way that blocking gimmicks is really easy now. Like, just putting Yugi as your leader in a party completely nullifies poison damage. So I wouldn't say it's that necessary to have, but I guess it would be nice to have it. Next is Toshiro Hitsugaya. For his Awakenings, he has 3 orb control time extenders and 2 team HP boosts, but his Awakenings aren't that great at all. His skill looks pretty good at first. It's not used that much. It does overwrite no Skyfall, so if an enemy nullifies Skyfalls for you for 10 turns, you can reduce it to 1 turn by using a skill and get a bicolor board from it. For his leader skill isn't that amazing at all, but it can have a max damage at 32 times, which is pretty good, I guess. But the only issue is you do have to clear the whole board to get the max damage. So I really wouldn't recommend this character at all. Next is Toshiro Hitsugaya and Liu Bei costume. For his Awakenings, he has 2 skill boosts. He has 4 Wood Row enhances, and for his Super Awakenings, I think it's best to put a skill boost on it to make him a 3 skill boost character. So his Awakenings are pretty decent to boost your overall party damage. And for his leader skill gives out a 16 times multiplier, but it doesn't have an HP multiplier, but it does cover that with a double 25% damage shield, which I think ends up with a 62.5% damage shield. So in that way, this character could be pretty decent. He's not top class at all, but he's definitely usable. But if you prefer characters having HP multiplier, I don't think this is a character for you. For his weapon evolution, for his Awakenings, he has an immobility resistance and a control time extension, so it's not all that great. I wouldn't really specifically use this immobility resistance if I have other options, just because of a control time extension. He does have that skill, but it's only useful for wood and dark parties. If you do get this character, I wouldn't really use his weapon evolution unless you don't have an immobility resistance. The next character is Sogo Okita. For his Awakenings, he has 4 skill boosts, he has 2 skill bind resistance, and he has 3 80% or over enhances. And his Super Awakenings, they're all not that very good. I would just put an FUA on it. But overall, his Awakenings are pretty decent. The fact that he has 80% or over enhances aren't too amazing, because they only give a 1.5 multiplier each. His skill is a 12-turn skill that boosts your light and dark attack by 4 times for 2 turns and charges the rest of your team's skills by 1 turn. And this skill is just pretty just simply strong. And for his leader skill, it boosts your party's HP and healing by 2. It's a semi-low 14 times multiplier leader, but it does have a strong point of if you clear 6 orbs at once, it'll add 3 combos. So you're not really going to be using this character in the normal game, but you might be able to use this character for farming, because if you just clear 6 light orbs, then you get a completely free 4 combos from that. So if there's any characters that have a pretty decently high combo absorption, you can just use this guy to just get over it. But the only problem is, if you are farming, you want to farm a lot, and that means you have to wait for these combos to go off every single time whenever you clear 6 or more orbs. So if you ever make a full board of light just for the DPS and not for the combos, then the combos will go off anyways, and it'll just waste time, and that time stacks up. So this character might be good for farming, but there are better options. That's why characters like Veroa don't get used too much. Next is Sogo Okita in Battle costume. For his Awakenings, he has a really drastic switch in style and gets 4 2-prongs, which isn't too amazing at all. And for his leader skill, it's pretty decent. He gets a 1.5 times HP multiplier, a 4 times healing multiplier, a damage shield, and a 16 times damage multiplier, which does have pretty good survivability, but it's literally just Fosca without the 7x6 board. So there's no real reason to use this character over Fosca, so yeah, this character is pretty useless. For the weapon evolution, he has a 2-prong and a gem resistance. Again, these like gimmick resistances are becoming not that amazing, especially when it's only 1. So there's not really much of a real reason to use this 2-prong weapon over anything else. Like, you could just use Zerog's 2-prong weapon and get much more value. So I wouldn't really use this character too much. This whole character isn't too useful, so you'll probably just use this character for trading in. Next is Shinsuke Takasugi. For his awakenings, he has 2 God Killers and a 7C, and you can put a God Killer as a Super Awakening. And sadly, you can't put a God Killer as a Latent Awakening because he's an attack type. But in total, your max damage output against a God type, just with your awakenings alone, is 52 times, which is pretty huge. But as a dark type, there's a lot of other dark type, God type killer characters, so there's not really much of a reason to use this character specifically. But if you don't have one, then this character will work perfectly fine. For his skill, he nullifies enemies' defense and makes an all-color board and removes locks. So since multi-attribute parties are getting stronger and stronger right now, this character may come in useful for that. And because he can reduce damage to 0, you can use him in the normal dungeons. I forgot what it's called, but on the highest part, because all their defense is extremely high. And his leader skill is really not that useful. Next is Shinsuke Takasugi in the Hades suit. For this character, his awakenings, it's all extremely average. He only has 2 7Ts, so his DPS isn't that amazing. His skill is again pretty good, but you can just use pre-evolution for that. And his leader skill is just not good. So this character, there's not much of a use for him at all. But in the next evolution, he has a pretty great changing style. He has 350% and less enhances, and he has a skill charge, and also his type changes from an attack to bounce type, so you can freely put any killer you want on it. So you can either put a DVP for Super Awakenings for just general damage, for just general use, or you can put a God Killer on it to just be a God Killer super damage dude that does damage. His skill is really good. It reduces your HP by 50%, and for 1 turn, it completely nullifies Damage Void, and also makes the board an all-color board. The only issue is there's not like too much of a reason to use him specifically, especially in a multi-attribute party, because that's what he's made for, because he's a 50% or less enhanced character. If you do want to use a character like him, I definitely recommend Kirito more from the SAO collab. And his leader skill is pretty decent. It has a 2 times HP multiplier, a damage shield, and an 18 times damage multiplier, but that's pretty much it. He's more sub-based. For the weapon evolution, it's a pretty good 80% over weapon with a skill bind resistance, but I wouldn't say you really need to try to go for this weapon. It's really good, but I'd really only get it if you ever get extras of Takasugi. Next is Kamui. Looking at his awakenings, his really only strong point is that he can either have 3 team HP boosts or 3 team healing boosts, including a super awakening. But in the state the game is at right now, there's not much of a reason to use that. So to sum him up, his awakenings aren't that good at all. His skill, I'll get back to that later. For his leader skill is really just a DPS centric, but not very good leader skill. So just don't worry about it. If you're going to use the actual character itself, then post-evolution is what you're looking for. Post-evolution and his awakenings, he has 3 skill boosts, he has 3 7Cs, and you can put a bind resistance on his super awakening. So he's a really good DPS sub, especially for like multi-attribute parties, even though he does have a DVP. But that's not really useful, or that's not really necessary in the state the game is at right now, and especially it won't be useful at all later when a new Latent Awakening comes out. But y'all will see that later. And he's good in multi-attribute parties because he has a guard rig. And his skill, well, I'll go over right now. His skill on the character itself is just good because you have a really strong DPS character that can nullify damage absorption for 2 turns, which does extremely well in Grotesque Being. And for his leader skill, its fire attribute parties aren't good at all, so ignore it too. For the next evolution, Kamui and Kagura, this character is really just specifically made for Gregory parties. For his awakenings, he has a skill boost plus. He has basically 4 control time extensions, so he extends control time by 2 seconds, and he has 5 2-prongs, and you can put a bind resistance as a super awakening. And for his skill, first off, he reduces healing for 2 turns, so you can override healing reducing enemies. So if your healing is reduced by like 75% in, I think, Grotesque Being, for 10 turns, you can change that to only reducing 50% HP for only 2 turns, which is a lot better. Or sorry, you can change that to reducing 50% healing for 2 turns, which is a lot better. It also makes a 4-color board. And for the leader skill, again, fire attribute parties are really not that good. But if you do want to use it, it gives a 16 times damage multiplier and has a damage resistance and adds 1 combo, but it doesn't have an HP boost or a healing boost. And again, it's a 2-pronged centered party, so this character is more sub-based than leader-based. Now this is where it gets real. So this weapon evolution is literally considered the best weapon in the game. So first off, the Awakenings, he has a bind resistance, a heal drop, and attack, whatever. The first use for this weapon is that it covers bind resistance. Second use for this weapon is that it boosts healing with the 1 heal drop enhance, which is pretty big when you actually use it. And the skill. So let's look at the first part of the skill. It reduces your healing by 50%, which sounds bad, but again, I said earlier, you can override worse healing reducing abilities done by enemies with this. So again, if whatever Brachios, whatever his name is, and Grotesque Being reduces your healing by 75% for 10 turns, then you can use this ability and override it. The second strong point of the skill is it completely nullifies damage absorption for 2 turns. And we all know how strong this is. It's amazing Grotesque Being. But if you look at the number of turns, the turn count is only 17 turns. This is, I'm pretty sure, the shortest 2-turn damage absorption skill in the game right now. Apart from, I think his name is Ryder from the Gunko collab. But the thing is that his skill is on the actual character itself, while he uses a different skill for his weapon evolution. Well, this character has it on the weapon evolution as well. So you can put it on any character at once along with the extra awakenings. So I wouldn't be really surprised if people spin this egg machine just for this weapon. But I wouldn't really say this weapon is extremely necessary to have. I mean, there's no such thing as a weapon that's necessary to have. But I don't have this weapon and I've gone through the game pretty smoothly. So this weapon just makes your life a lot easier, but it's not completely necessary to have. Again, like you could use, instead of this weapon, like Uruko's weapon that might come out later after when the new Hero Ring gadget comes out. Because it's basically just this weapon, but a little bit worse. Now on with the 5 stars. The first one I'm going through is the Orb Change character, Tsukuya. For Awakenings, she has 2 skill boosts, 3 team HP boosts, and 3 7Cs if you put it on Awakenings. Or you can put a Bind Resistance or DPP on the Super Awakening, but I'd recommend the 7C. And she has an L shape. So DPS-wise, she's pretty decent. She's pretty good. And with the team HP boost, she can help your team stats go up a little bit. So if your team's pretty low in HP, I guess if you can fit this character in there, then she could help while at still being able to contribute damage-wise. And for her skill is a 5-turn. His skill is a 5-turn skill where mainly it adds 1 combo, which is pretty good. You can also put assists on it if you want, since the turn counter is really light and short. And for leader skill, first, let me go over that it keeps your control time limited to 8 seconds, which is a double-edged sword, because if you're pretty good at the game, then you can finish your puzzle within 8 seconds, and you don't have the risk of getting your control time reduced at all. But then again, you also can't extend your own control time. It does make the game a little bit more strict and hard. And what the leader skill does is that it boosts healing by 2 times, it reduces damage by 50%, and it boosts your damage by 18 times. And because you have some HP boosts on your awakening, it sort of feels like an all stat boost. So this character is not really bad at all. I feel like it can work for the amount of money you spend if you do spend money on it to get her, but I do always think there are better options. But also, if you want to use this character as a leader, she does go pretty well with the character called Elme from the Relic Dragon event or whatever it's called. For the weapon evolution, I think this weapon is pretty good. While there's not going to be that many places where you're going to need both light and dark orb enhances, unless you're running a light-dark party, it's more just like a multi-purpose weapon where you can either just use it as a light enhance or dark enhance. So if you want an enhanced weapon, this character can work out for you too. Kishimura, looking at his awakenings, he has 4 wood row enhances, he has 2 skill bind resistances, and he has 4 skill boosts if you include his super awakening. and I'd recommend using the Skill Beat Plus instead of the Bind Resistance, because he's more of a farming character than an actual like normal game character. And he's also a balance type, so you can freely put any killer you want on him. His skill is a pretty unique skill. He changes the bottom 2 rows into wood and light, and then locks those orbs. And due to him locking those orbs, it gives you a good counter against spinners, because if you don't know, spinners can't change locked orbs. So he's pretty good as a farming sub, but then again, he's not really used that much anymore, and his leader skill is not that good. And now you'll see why this Egg Machine's really marketed toward new players. For his weapon evolution, it's basically just a cloud resistance weapon. If you don't have a cloud resistance weapon, these weapons are just gonna be really easy to get. Next is Kagura. For Awakening, she has 4 skill boosts if you include the Super Awakening, and she has 2 physical type killers, and because she's an attack type, she can also put 3 latent killers for physical types on her. So in total, you can get around a 30 times damage multiplier, and along with that, she also has 2 DVPs. So depending on the situation, she can be really good for farming, or even be really good for ranking dungeons. And for her skill, she has a really short turn skill, so you can hit her at anything you want on it. And it's a pretty decently powerful conversion skill. For her weapon evolution, there's not really anything too special about it. It's just a really easy to get control time extension weapon. So if you're lacking control time, then I guess you can just throw this on a character. If you don't have a control time extending character, it can help out with a little bit of fire damage, but there is an issue where her skill is only 6 turns long, so you're gonna have to use up your base character's skill really quickly, or this skill will charge. And depending on the party, it'll probably harm you more than help you. Next is Tai Shimura. For Awakenings, she has a God Killer, a Devil Killer, and 3 50% or less enhances. And on her Super Awakenings, you can put a Dragon Killer on her, and she's a balance type, so you can freely put any killer you want on her. So basically, for one of each type, you're basically confirmed to have at least a 10 times multiplier for either Dragon, God, or Devil type if you put the right lane and Awakenings on it. And because she has 3 50% or less enhances, her damage output can be pretty insane. And along with that, her skill is a 6-turn skill, which is really short. And what it does is it halves HP and has a breath, which is basically a thing that says inflict light damage equal to attack times 100, which comes really in handy in farming. And for her weapon evolution, this weapon is just a really easy way to get a 50% or less enhanced weapon. So if you don't have any other 50% or less enhanced weapon, you can just grab this one. And for example, if you have a character with 3 50% or less enhances on Awakenings, you can put this weapon on her to give him 4 50% or less enhances to change their damage output from 8 times to 16 times, which is pretty big. It does have the same issue with Kagura's weapon though, with the skill being really short, so you do have to watch out for that. Next is Isao Kongo. For his Awakenings, he has 3 skill boosts, or 5 if you include the Super Awakening, which is really big for being a 5-star character. And he has 3 team HP boosts, which is just like a little extra thing to have. And he also has a Jammer Resistance Plus, which completely blocks jammers. And while jammers aren't as bad as blind or poison, this character can help out with inherits and giving you a lot more leeway in parties. He's also physical, so he might be more toward like Gregory parties as a skill boost character and a jammered block character, but it is a little hard to fit him in. For the weapon evolution, the only thing I can really say about it is that it's a really easy to get jammer resistance weapon. That's all there is about it. Next is Kotaro Katsura. For his Awakenings, he has 4 L shapes, which isn't too amazing, and you can add one if you want on the Super Awakenings just for extra DPS. So if you're running an L-shaped party, he can be semi-useful. And he also has a blind resistance plus, so he can completely negate blindness. And for his skill, it's a 3-turn skill that unlocks the board and creates 1 column of bombs and 1 column of water. This skill is extremely unique, and this is literally the only character that has it. So if you do get this character, I would recommend to keep him just in case for farming. And this skill is also really good because it's only 3 turns, so you can inherit a skill on it if you want. So you can use that inherited skill, and 3 turns later, really quickly, use this skill. For the weapon evolution, this is basically just a really easy to get L-shaped weapon, and I haven't really explained what an L-shaped weapon is. So basically you see the lock on it. Well, there's two types, but we're only going to talk about this type. If you see a lock on it, then what it does is it unlocks the board. Well, there's multiple uses. The first use is that it unlocks the whole board, which is really good if there's an enemy that either makes locked skyfalls or locks the whole board, because this one awakening completely negates all that. But what a lock does is it basically negates you from being able to convert that orb that's locked. And the second use for is that it boosts attack damage. And the third use for it is that in ranking dungeons, it helps you get a boost in points. And sometimes L shapes are the only way for you to get the top rank. So I definitely recommend try to get a few L-shaped weapons if you don't have one. But they do just like give out L-shaped weapons sometimes, so I wouldn't stress too much about it. Next is Tatsuma Sakamoto. For his awakenings, he has 2 7Cs and a DPP. And for his super awakenings, you can either put a devil killer, a machine killer, or a dragon killer on it. And because he's a balance type, you can put any Litten killer you want on it. So basically, you can either get a 10 times damage multiplier on either devil types, machine types, and dragon types for free. His skill is just a simple healing skill where it automatically heals you for 30% of HP for 3 turns. It removes bind and awaken bind for 7 turns. And this is on 10 turns, so it's not a bad skill at all. And his leader skill is really unique. It multiplies the amount of coins you get from that dungeon by 2.5. So if you don't have characters like Ganesha, then you could just use this character instead. This character is really just like an all-rounder. He does good damage. He has a pretty useful skill. So I wouldn't really mind having this, especially because it's a 5-star, and that's really good for being a 5-star. In for his weapon evolution, he has a immobility resistance weapon. Again, it's just a really easy to get one. And also his skill is really good as an inherit. So I wouldn't really mind getting this card. Next is Kyubei Yagyu. For Awakening, she has 2 Dragon Killers and 3 2-prongs if you include the Super Awakening. And because she's a balance type, you can put 3 Dragon Killers as a Late Awakening to get a 30 times multiplier on Dragon types. And there's not that many Dragon Killer Dark Attribute characters, so this character has a lot of uses, but she completely loses to this character called Halloween Chiyome. Halloween Chiyome has 3 Dark Row enhances on her Awakenings, and for her skill, it's only 5 turns long. So her Awakenings are a lot more helpful for Dark Attribute parties, and her skill is a lot easier to inherit things on. So there's not much of a reason to use Kyubei over Chiyome. But if you don't have Chiyome, then Kyubei isn't a bad replacement for her. For a weapon, it's really just a Dark Orb enhancing weapon. The healing won't help you all that much, and the skill is pretty decent, but there's not really much of a reason to use this weapon specifically. Alright guys, that's gonna be the end of this video. This egg machine's really good for what it costs, which is only 5 magic stones. There's not one character where the person's completely useless, unlike some egg machines, but do remember that there will be other events going on really soon, like I said. So make sure not to rush your magic stone too much. What I always recommend is saving your magic stones until the very last day to see if there's any events going on, and if there isn't, then spend how much you want on that egg machine. But yeah, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like, subscribe, notification bell, leave a comment, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace.